More than 60% of the world's most consumed foods are now considered AT risk. We're counting down 15 of them, from ocean species losing 70% of their biomass to staple crops facing incurable disease and pollinator collapse. Climate disruption, pathogens, and supply chain fragility connect every entry. The number one spot may already be reshaping your grocery bill. We begin at 15, with a fish vanishing from the Atlantic. Number 15. Wild Atlantic salmon has become a climate warning sign for seafood lovers across Europe. Since the 1970s, wild salmon stocks have dropped by nearly 70%, according to long-term ICES data. As ocean temperatures climb, even a 1.5 degrees Celsius rise could make 80% of current salmon habitat unsuitable by 2035. That would turn a once common protein into a rare luxury. With wild fillets vanishing from supermarket shelves, price trends already show a premium for wild-caught salmon. While most supply now comes from aquaculture, the shrinking presence of this iconic fish reveals how quickly climate stress can erase familiar foods from the market. Number 14. Cacao faces a shrinking future as climate models project that nearly 89% of today's suitable land for growing this crop will be lost by 2050. The cacao tree requires a narrow range of temperature, rainfall, and altitude, conditions increasingly rare as West Africa, which supplies most of the world's chocolate, grows hotter and drier. In Ghana, farmers have reported a 15% drop in yields in 2022 alone, much of it blamed on the rise of capsid bugs that thrive in warmer weather. Some, like Abena Kusi, have moved plantations upslope to chase cooler air, but higher labor costs and persistent drought make this a partial fix. Without rapid adaptation, chocolate could become a boutique luxury, its supply squeezed by both climate stress and mounting pest pressure. Number 13. Almonds have become a barometer for the health of pollinators in modern agriculture. Nearly every almond blossom in California's orchards depends on managed honeybees colonies for pollination. Yet since 2006, beekeepers have reported an average 30% annual loss in their hives. This decline has already translated to a 15% drop in almond yields between 2020 and 2022. The Bee-Informed Partnership cites pesticide exposure, disease, and shrinking forage as key drivers, while California's ongoing drought adds another layer of stress. As one entomologist warns, the almond's future is tied directly to the fate of its pollinators. Without healthy bees, even the most resilient orchard cannot deliver a reliable harvest. Number 12. Avocados are facing a mounting threat from two directions: water scarcity and pollinator decline. In California, which supplies most U.S. avocados, drought-driven water allocation cuts have forced growers to reduce irrigation, shrinking harvests, and raising production costs. At the same time, a 10% drop in bee populations has led to lower fruit set, since avocados depend heavily on pollination for high yields. These pressures have combined to push retail avocado prices up by 31% in 2023 alone, outpacing most other produce. For consumers, the result is a trendy fruit that's suddenly harder to find and much more expensive, as both climate and biology squeeze supply. Number 11. Wheat faces a growing emergency, as the UG99 strain of stem rust threatens the world's most important grain. First identified in Uganda in 1999, UG99 has evolved to overcome many of the resistance genes bred into modern wheat. In unprotected fields, field trials in Ethiopia and Kenya have shown 100% crop loss within just 10 days of infection. Between 2018 and 2022, reported incidence of UG99 surged by 300%, with outbreaks now stretching from East Africa into parts of South Asia and the Middle East. Wheat delivers about 1/5 of global human calories, making it especially vulnerable to a pathogen that spreads rapidly and defeats standard defenses. The International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center now recommends stacking multiple resistance genes and careful fungicide management, but these solutions are costly and not always accessible to smallholder farmers. As UG99 advances, the risk of sudden, catastrophic wheat shortages grows, with price shocks and food insecurity looming for millions. Number 10. The Cavendish banana stands as a stark warning about the dangers of monoculture in global agriculture. Since the 1990s, Fusarium wilt tropical race 4, or TR4, has moved from isolated outbreaks to a pandemic. now confirmed in 33 countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The fungus can remain hidden for up to 6 months before symptoms appear, but when it strikes, entire plantations, sometimes 100% of the crop, can be wiped out within weeks. With the Cavendish making up nearly half of all bananas sold worldwide, this pathogen threatens not just export economies, but also basic nutrition in many regions. Biotech labs are racing to develop resistant varieties, yet there is still no cure for TR4 in the field. The relentless advance of this disease exposes how dependence on a single variety can put an entire food system at risk. Number 9. Coffee is facing a future shaped by climate volatility. High-resolution climate models project that nearly half of the land currently suitable for Arabica coffee will be lost by 2050 as rising temperatures and shifting rainfall patterns push traditional growing zones beyond their limits. In 2021, a severe frost in Brazil's Minas Gerais region triggered a 60% spike in Arabica futures prices within weeks, sending shockwaves through the global market. For millions who rely on coffee as both a daily ritual and a source of income, these changes are more than theoretical. As climate pressure mounts, every cup becomes a reminder of how quickly a familiar staple can slip from reach. 8th place, rice faces an accelerating crisis as saltwater intrusion transforms once productive paddies across Asia's great river deltas. A 2023 FAO hydro survey found that 1.5 million hectares in regions like Bangladesh and Vietnam are now affected by salinity, with concentrations above 4 decisiemens per meter slashing yields by up to 45%. For 3.5 billion people who depend on rice as a daily staple, rising seas and upstream damming are not distant threats. They are eroding food security today. Farmers switching to salt-tolerant varieties have seen some recovery, but higher seed costs and uncertain returns make adaptation a costly gamble. The steady advance of seawater into the continent's rice bowls signals a broader vulnerability. When the hydrology shifts, even the most basic foods can slip out of reach. Number 7. Canned sardines have become a warning sign for anyone relying on shelf-stable protein. Between 2020 and 2023, inventories across Europe and North Africa dropped by 34%, driven by overfishing, climate-driven stock decline, and pandemic bottlenecks. At the same time, the average retail price jumped 65%, making a once affordable pantry staple suddenly scarce and expensive. The EU Fisheries Control Agency now tracks sardine stocks as a critical indicator for food security, especially in regions where canned fish is a nutritional fallback during a crisis. The shrinking supply of sardines reveals how even long-lasting foods are no longer immune to the disruptions reshaping global food systems. Number 6. Evaporated milk is quietly slipping from supermarket shelves as dairy sector pressures ripple into pantry basics. In 2022, U.S. processors reported a 28% drop in evaporated milk production, citing record-high feed costs and supply chain bottlenecks that left dairy farmers squeezed. As a result, the retail price for a standard 12-ounce can surged from $1.80 to $2.70 in just 3 years, a 50% increase that has forced many budget-conscious shoppers to look for substitutes or go without. Once considered an essential for emergency kits and baking, evaporated milk now stands as a warning sign. When the cost of animal feed spikes, even shelf-stable staples can become scarce and expensive, exposing the fragility of food systems built on intensive livestock production. Number 5. Corn sits at the heart of global food and fuel systems, but its future is increasingly uncertain. In 2022, the United States, by far the world's largest producer, recorded a 12% drop in corn yields, the steepest decline in over a decade, as drought conditions swept through the Midwest. Projections from the IPCC suggest that by 2030, global corn harvests could fall by as much as 15% under moderate climate scenarios. Since corn is the primary feed for dairy and meat production, these losses ripple quickly through the protein supply chain, raising costs and tightening supplies far beyond the cereal aisle. The vulnerability of such a central crop exposes just how fragile modern food systems have become when climate stress hits a staple that underpins both livestock and biofuel industries. Number 4. Soybeans have become a case study in how global trade volatility can threaten a food staple. As the world's leading source of plant protein and vegetable oil, soybeans underpin everything from animal feed to processed foods. Yet recent years have brought sharp swings. The FAO's commodity outlook recorded a 20% jump in price volatility and a 12% dip in global output during 2022, much of it triggered by escalating tariffs between major exporters. Unlike crops threatened mainly by climate or disease, soybeans are exposed to sudden policy shifts and market disruptions, revealing how economic tensions can ripple through food systems and make even the most widely grown crops unexpectedly scarce. Coming to the top three, olive oil faces a crisis shaped by both biology and climate. The Mediterranean's signature crop is now under siege from Xylella fastidiosa, a bacterial pathogen devastating olive groves across southern Europe. Italy's harvest in 2023 collapsed by 57%, while Spain has seen a 48% decline in productive groves since 2016. At the same time, record-setting droughts, tracked by the Copernicus Drought Index, have left soils parched and trees unable to recover. Wholesale prices have surged to €6.2 per kilogram, a 72% increase since 2019, making olive oil less accessible for millions. This double blow of disease and water scarcity reveals how monoculture farming leaves even the most iconic foods exposed to sudden collapse. In second place, honey has become a visible casualty of the global crisis. Between 2020 and 2022, worldwide honey production dropped by 20%, according to FAO data, while retail prices in the European Union climbed by 35%. This decline traces directly to the loss of managed bee colonies, with fewer hives able to meet the growing demand for natural sweeteners and pollinator-dependent crops. For consumers, the shrinking supply means higher prices and empty spaces on store shelves where familiar jars once stood. Honey's quiet disappearance serves as a warning. When pollinators falter, the ripple reaches far beyond the hive, touching everything from breakfast tables to entire food systems. Potatoes now sit at the crossroads of climate volatility and aggressive disease. As the world's fourth most consumed crop, they face a rare double threat: rising temperatures and the rapid spread of late blight. In 2023, the EU43 strain swept from Belgium to the Baltic in just 12 weeks, thriving in record heat and producing lesions that outpace older strains. Standard fungicides are losing effectiveness as the EU43 adapts, leaving growers with fewer defenses. Climate models using CMYP6 scenarios warn of a 40% drop in European yields by 2040, even if some adaptation occurs. The impact is already felt at the market. Eurostat recorded a 55% surge in fresh potato prices in 2025, triggered by heat-driven shortages and blight losses. Shrinking July rainfall and higher input costs squeeze margins further. Unlike crops facing a single challenge, potatoes are pressured by both a heat-adapted pathogen and intensifying drought. Once a fallback in hard times, potatoes are now at risk of scarcity. Their struggle signals how quickly a staple can become vulnerable when climate, disease, and supply chains all converge. Across all 15 foods, one pattern emerges: global diets depend on a narrow set of species and fragile supply chains. Over 60% of our most consumed foods now face escalating threats. This growing instability isn't distant, it's reshaping what future grocery shelves will hold. Food security is not guaranteed.